Okay, good evening. Call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Has the board had a chance to review our minutes?
I have moved to accept as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
They are approved. Seeing no department heads or committees, we have no appointments tonight, correct, Mr. Buckner? No public hearings, new business. We have the order of taking for the widening and relocation of Orchard Street. This is relative to that project we met on over the summer for the re-signalization and widening. Seeing nobody in the audience to speak for or against the project, what is the board's pleasure on this?
Move to accept as long as everything is in order.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. No other new business, old business, Mr. Shivo?
None.
Mrs. Smith?
Not old, no.
Town Administrator's Report, Mr. Buckner.
As I said on the slot casino, the next thing that will happen is the applicant files a Phase 2 application with the Mass Gaming Commission, and then it moves forward from there. On the Town Council RFP, proposals are due September 19th, and we've received 16 requests for the RFP thus far, so it's a popular one. On the Fall Town Meeting, I spoke with the assessors and town moderator, John Donahue, about a date. Both parties were in favor of Tuesday, October 29th, as being acceptable. And I will have a draft warrant ready for the board's October 1st meeting.
Randy, do you need a formal vote to
Yes.
set that as the date?
Yes.
And the board's okay with that?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
what's the board's formal pleasure?
I would request that we use October 29th as the fall town meeting date.
Tuesday, the 29th, second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is approved. And Randy, if we can notify the public, we'll have
Yep.
a selectmen's meeting prior to that, 6:30. And if there's space for us, we'll just do it at the school.
At the school.
So we're already on site?
Yep.
Thank you.
On Central Dispatch, I've got a meeting set up by IT consultant Tim Grabaras with one of the software companies to demonstrate the software package for Central Dispatch. Capital Planning starts meeting tomorrow night with department heads to review requests for capital expenditures. As usual, we won't have enough money, so we'll have to prioritize the needs. And upcoming Southeastern Mass Health Group has its annual meeting on Monday, the 19th, in Norton. Just said that, Capital Planning, first meeting tomorrow night. Thank you.
Everything?
That's it.
Any questions for Randy?
The meeting tomorrow is going to be here, Randy?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Selectmen's report, Mr. Shivo.
None tonight.
Mrs. Smith.
I don't really have a report, but I just want to make a comment, and maybe we can hash that out for a second or two. But I don't know if you have this letter in correspondence. Do you have this letter in correspondence? And if you are, we'll just bring it up at that time. It's regarding the bus schedules.
I don't, so if you'd like to go
Okay,
with it.
this is regarding the bus schedules. It seems to me that this year, we're having an awful lot of trouble with our bus schedules from the school. I know myself, I've received complaints, and now another letter. This is probably the fourth one that we have received. I'm not calling anyone to task, but I would like information. Now, if the best place to get this information is the school committee, I will try there. If not, I will go to Jackie Forbes herself. I want to know who has changed the bus routes and the reason for it. There are several children not being picked up where they normally would have in years past. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to go ahead with that and question both school committee and Jackie Forbes to find out who the responsible party is and why this is happening.
Do you want to vote, Mrs. Smith?
I would, please.
Okay. Mr. Shivo, any objections?
I have no objections.
Mrs. Smith, if you'd like to motion.
Please, I would motion that.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Anything else,
I'll
Mrs.
let you
Smith?
know what happens.
Thank you. Anything else for us tonight?
No, I think everything else is good.
Good. Correspondence, we have a notice from Mass Highway regarding the additional improvements needed by Walmart before they are issued a permit for Mass Highway. It looks like a few minor ones, more so regarding drainage structures than anything else at this point. We have also in correspondence a letter of resignation from Carla McRae. It is with regret that I resigned from the Business and Economic Development Commission. David and I became grandparents this past January, and Monday is my day to spend with our grandson. Thank you for the opportunity, Carla McRae. What is the board's pleasure?
I would like to accept it, but I don't really want to accept it because she has been such an asset to that committee. And I want to thank her very much for doing the years that she has been on it and what she has contributed. And I also would like to make note at this time that this is going to mean we are needing 2 people on that committee.
Correct.
Because Dave Hutchinson is no longer going to be able to
Yep.
be on it. Other than that, I with regret accept her.
Thank you. Mr. Shiver?
I second that and wish her good luck with her new grandson.
Absolutely. I know Kyle is still going to maintain her commitment to the town of Raynham, and we thank her for her service. This is to the state requesting an extension of the time frame in 207 CMR 3.024 till December 31st. This is regarding preliminary negotiations with Verizon, who has contacted the town recently to enter into negotiations, potentially to provide cable, and I say potentially, and those are my words only because we've had these conversations before and Verizon decided to pull out of it. So I don't want to get people's hopes up too much, but it looks as though, Randy, that our request was approved. Great. We have correspondence from Mass Municipal Association inviting us to invite our 6th grade students to participate in the statewide essay contest. If I were an elected leader of my community, I would make a difference by, and there is information here on how to submit it and who to submit it to. Randy, if you want to forward this on to our schools, that'd be great. Our final piece of correspondence is from the fire department. It's their August 2013 activity reports, and I think we probably jinxed them last month because we said they were down.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now they have again exceeded the benchmark from last year by 9 calls, and so they continue to be extremely busy. No other correspondence, no press time, no emergency business. We have citizen and community input. Mr. Bencourt, anything for us tonight?
I received a copy of a letter from Mr. Buckner.
Could you just go to the podium, Mr. Bencourt?
Mr. Chairman, I received a letter from Mr. Buckner at a request that you had received from a neighbor to the north side of the building, requesting the removal of 6 sections of fence. And I called Mr. Buckner and told him that I was out of town, but I would be here after Labor Day to explain the situation. Now, this is the second time that this has come up. The fence was put in per request and order of the planning board when this lot was approved for the renovation. That was put in as the same as the fence on the south side of the building. We removed 1 section of fence because it became a safety issue. As you were driving out, you couldn't see to the right down South Main Street. That fence was a requirement by the planning board. And that was explained to the board prior to the 3 new members that we have here. It was placed 2 feet off the property line because we needed to keep it in a way so we could service the fence. We stain the fence or whatever it might be. But there's a history behind that. There was a question as to where that property line was when we had it engineered, because we had a number of problems on this site. The requirements put on us to do this by conservation, you had to have so many square feet in order to get certain things done. That just about made it. Our neighbor had approached me and asked if he could buy a piece of that, and I told him that that's not my prerogative. I says that you'd have to bring to the town, but I didn't think we could surrender any square footage in order to meet the requirements of both conservation and the planning board. This seems like a little bit of a history as to the process we had to go through. The planning board required us to have 70 parking spaces. In order to get 70 parking spaces, we had to go through conservation because we had to increase the impervious square footage on the parcel. Now, I'm sure you know what that means, blacktop, basically, in building. And at the same time, they asked us to provide for expansion, which we did. The south side of the building, if we needed to expand, we just put in the foundation. We moved all the utilities away, and there's enough space there to have it happen. For a town committee trying to convert an existing building for town use, we were forced to do a lot of things to comply, and we did comply. The setback for the river is almost at the sidewalk. There was an agreement with conservation as to how much work we could do. We had to abide by those rules and regulations. Now, the fence is down. What can I say? Whoever gave him authority or permission to take the fence down might have to go back to the planning board and get them to say, yeah, it's okay. Now, I wouldn't have spent the money to put the fence up in the first place if the planning board had said, you don't need it. They required it. That's why it was up there. And I explained that to the neighbor. Once they found the bound where it was, I mentioned to him, you don't have to do anything. We're going to be having to put a new fence in anyways, according to the planning board. We'll put the fence right on the property line for you. You get the good side of the fence facing you instead of the back of the fence. And when he came back from Florida, he moved the sheds off the property line, and he moved his fence back to the property line. But that didn't relieve us from having to put the fence up. We still had to put the fence up. So we put it 2 feet off the property line, just so that we could maintain it. Now, cosmetically, that's not my call. I did what I was supposed to do, and I repeated this to the prior board, as I repeat it to you now. The fence is down, but I don't know if it came down with knowledge of the planning board, because if you change their requirements, I believe they have to agree to it.
May I jump in, Mr. Betancourt?
Beg your pardon?
May I make a
Yes.
comment, if I may? You mentioned a couple of times that the Conservation Commission had made that a requirement, that location of the fence.
No, it wasn't them. Planning board required the fence.
You said Conservation Commission.
I said conservation had other requirements on what we could do on this lot,
Oh.
because we're within the river setback law.
Yeah. Well, that's not what I heard. In any event, we were told that the Conservation Commission, this request had been submitted to the Conservation Commission, and they, in fact, had no problem with the change. But here's the thing that I'm puzzled with. We're not talking, what happened was not the removal of the entire fence along the...
No, we only took down 6 sections.
6 sections. So what I'm puzzled by is, why is the 6 sections so critical, in as much as the remainder of the fence back to the place where, you know, at the very outset, how does that affect in any way?
The fence should have gone to the bound on the sidewalk. Because that's what the planning board required.
Yeah.
We didn't take it all the way down to the bound.
So you didn't agree with the planning board at the outset?
No, we left him so we'd have some maneuverability.
Well, if the planning board originally required it to go right to the boundary, they would have done so without regard to the safety, right? So that was an error in its first case.
Well, I'm not going to judge somebody's error.
Well,
okay?
you're judging somebody right now, so go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to judge anybody, sir. I'm just trying to state the facts that we had to work under a particular set of rules and regulations. And the question was, why was the fence put up? It was put up because it was put on the plan by the planning board that we had to put the fence up. I wouldn't have spent money putting up the fence. Why would I blow town money putting up a fence if it didn't have to go up? We were required to put it up. And I'm just explaining to you, because a question was asked of me, in a way that I thought it was my personal decision to put a fence up. It wasn't. It was a decision. You go to the plans, take a look at the plans, you see the line, fence. See the other line, fence. We put it in. Okay? I have no problem with that. We did what we were asked to do and what we were told to do by the planning board and conservation. Has things happened out here that's contrary to that? Yeah, but I'm not going to elaborate on that. Yes, it has. I've spoken with Mr. Buckner. If you want to find out some of the things, ask Mr. Buckner, because I did talk to him prior to the meeting about the difficulties we had making this building the town hall when it was a school. The problems that we had with planning board and conservation. Planning board says one way, in and out. That's why we had to take the section of fence down. It's still leaning there. We took the fence down there so that you would not have as bad of an obstructed view looking down South Main Street. You have to get out in the road to see it.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Any questions for Mr. Betancourt?
I don't have any questions for Mr. Betancourt, but he says it's completely true, because I remember the situation at the time. I do have a comment to make. I don't know whether this is the appropriate time to make it. I'm sorry?
I was asked to come upstairs and just say something for conservation.
Oh,
Is
well,
that possible?
by all means.
I was just talking to Bill Smith, and Bill Smith wanted me to make it clear that John Dolan did come before conservation about the fence, okay? All we agreed was conservation had no issues with the fence being there. We didn't tell him he could take it down. It was just that conservation had no issues with it being there at the time because it didn't affect anything. He'd get no permission from conservation to take it down, okay? It just had no conservation issues, as we could see it. And that's why they voted unanimously to just say that they had no issues with the fence being there. That they did not say he could, they didn't give him permission to take it down.
Right.
Okay, that was from, Bill Smith wanted me to make that very clear.
All right, thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith, go ahead.
Well, it wasn't conservation was correct, because it wasn't their prerogative to either to say, yes, take it down, or no, leave it up, because as Mr. Betancourt says, it was the planning board's decision to have the fence there. And in my opinion, the fence should still be there. At the Veterans Memorial Committee the other night, a request was made that the fence be put back. It is a backdrop for the memorial at this time, and until arborvitaes and trees or whatever can be fixed in the background to make it more palatable to people, the fence should be returned. Now, I don't know how you people feel about it, or how, if it needs a motion to have that done. I certainly will motion to have it done, have it put back up until such time as everything can be corrected.
I would like to hear more from the planning board as regards why it's such a critical thing. I'd like to hear the planning board describe and defend and explain why this fence is such a critical part of this facility. Now, let me just finish, sir, because I've heard you. I mean, to me, this is incredibly making a mountain out of a molehill. It must border on political, because there can't be any. And I would like to hear what the reasoning is on the part of the planning board, the justification for having two fences 2 feet apart from each other, which in my opinion doesn't look particularly attractive. Is there not a better way to resolve this problem with one of the town's neighbors besides just, I mean, I would like to hear more from the planning board on this issue. And as far as the Conservation Commission goes, if the Conservation Commission has no objections, it's pretty arguable that that's a vote to go ahead. If they have no objections, if any committee says we don't object to this, then by golly, I would take that personally as a sign that I had pretty clear path to make a decision. So I'd like to hear more from the planning board on this issue before we take this any further.
Thank you, Mr.
Fine.
Smith.
I would just render an explanation that was made to me when it was done. When you change the use in a zoned area,
Mr. Betancourt, could you just get a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
I'd think you could hear me, Joe, if I was down the hall.
The TV can't.
My understanding is that when you change the use of a space in a zone, they define it by having you put a fence on your property line. The one that comes to mind is a Dunkin' Donuts. They make them put the fences around it because the neighbor might still be residential. And that one, I think, was the basis that they put that in. Now, why they have it, I don't know. But my understanding of what was just said by Conservation was they had no objection to it being there because they agreed that it could go there on the permit they gave us to build the building. To renovate this building, the plan was approved with fences. That's why they couldn't say, no, they got to take it out because it's in the setback. No, they've already agreed to let it be there. I would argue that they agreed to that. I mean, there's nothing with, conservation engineer laid out what he wanted us to do. We did it.
Do we have a copy of that letter?
What letter?
The letter that was from the Conservation Committee?
Yeah,
Could we see that letter?
I'll go see if I can find it.
So rather than talk about it,
Yeah.
This
was just recently, though. This was
I
just
know.
a couple
We
weeks
were
ago.
told I understood that the Conservation Commission had approved, and if the language is slightly different than approved, I'd like to see what the language is, because obviously we made a decision based on what we thought was a concurrence on the part of the Conservation Commission. If that's not true, I would like to see that letter so that we have a better understanding of what decision was actually made.
Okay, I will go look for the letter, definitely.
Yes, please.
I also had given the letter to Randy and told Randy about how the conservation had voted. And at the time, I think I gave Randy also all the minutes of the meeting that night too, that we had discussed about, and again, the board that we have now is not the original board that was here when the town hall was put in.
Thank you, Gail. I think, I've been trying to listen to both sides on this, and we're spending more time now talking about panels of fence than this board has spent on Triple E. And this board, and myself in particular, have gone to great lengths over our careers to advance the interests of our residents when they're prudent and appropriate. We just took a motion tonight to look into why bus stops were changed because of resident input. We have a resident who's a direct abutter of this property. He was aggrieved by fence panels being up. The fence panels being up, in my opinion, became arbitrary when the one on the south side was taken down. So if you add and subtract, now we're talking about 5 fence panels, not 6. We are talking about fence panels. A neighbor of this building, a taxpayer in Raynham, and in my opinion, a distinguished public servant, asked this board to take down fence panels. Fence panels. We did not close this building. We did not change the dynamic of this building. It is 5 wooden fence panels. And we are having now a 20-minute discussion on it. I'm failing to see the point at this point of why it is so important. A neighbor who we advocate for, who this board advocates for, asked for it to be taken down. Nobody else objected. And this action was taken months after the original request, and according to Mr. Betancourt, years after the first request from this neighbor. It is a wooden fence panel. We have people dying from Triple E. That's what this board should be focusing on, not wooden fence panels. That's my piece. Any other input on this?
I would just like to make one more comment, Mr. Chairman. I didn't come here for a debate. I came here to make an explanation as to why the fence was put in the first place. I was asked to come in and do that. Now, I've been chairman of the town building committee for a long time. There's a lot of stuff that we've done very amiably, very easily, and we worked well together. I didn't come in for a debate. I didn't say that the fence shouldn't have come down. I just said why the fence was put up. If anybody feels that their actions were incorrect, that's not my hunt. I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to explain why we had to put the fence up. And why was it 2 feet back? Because I didn't think it would be the right thing to put 2 fences face to face, which people might say it was a spite fence. We didn't. On this one here, it went right on the property line, right to the bound. We chose to take one down for safety purposes. There's no safety situation on that side because the way the road comes in, you can well, and that's an entrance on this side. That's all I was doing, Mr. Chairman, explaining because I was questioned by Mr. Buckner to explain why. And that's why I was here. I wasn't here for a debate.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other questions? What was that, Mr. Betancourt? Any other business tonight?
None.
What is the board's pleasure?
Move to adjourn, pay the bills.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.